This is the ministry of Moses, part 99. And we're going to take our text from Numbers 23, verse 1 to 6. Now let's consider verse 1 to 5. And Balaam said unto Balak, build me here 7 altars, and prepare me here 7 oxen and 7 rams. And Balak did as Balaam had spoken. And Balak and Balaam offered on every altar a bullock and a ram. And Balaam said unto Balak, stand by the burnt offering, and I will go. Peradventure the Lord will come to meet me, and whatsoever he showeth me, I will tell thee. And he went to an high place. And God met Balaam, and he said unto him, I have prepared 7 altars, and I have offered upon every altar a bullock and a ram. And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth, and said, return unto Balak, and thus thou shalt speak. Now Balak was a king, but because he wanted the people of God to be cursed, he became a messenger to Balaam. He did everything Balaam commanded him to do. You see, our enemy, the devil, is desperate. He is ready to do anything just to ensure that he wins his battle over our lives. This is why if you are lazy, you do not look like God, neither do you look like the devil. Because even the devil is busy doing something. A lazy man is a strange species. He does not look like God, and he does not look like the devil. The king was ready to do anything, just to place a curse on the Israelites. Believe me, the moment Balaam stepped into the city, the king stepped down for him. The moment Balaam stepped into the city, the king stepped down for him to step up. Suddenly Balaam appeared to be the one giving commands, while the king began to receive commands. The commander became the commanded. Another lesson to learn is selflessness, which is the true spirit of leadership. This king was doing all this to save his own people. He wanted to save the kingdom so that his people will not be killed and rendered homeless. The attempt of the king here was good and commendable, but the problem he had was that he did not know God. It is possible for a good kingdom, it is possible for a good king not to know God. You can be good in the eyes of men without knowing God. So you don't judge by what men are saying. How to know such people is by looking out for who they run to in the time of trouble. It is possible for a good king not to know God. And how to know such people is to find out who they run to in the time of trouble. A good king can do anything, whether godly or ungodly, to save his people, while a godly king cannot do anything. He knows only, he knows that the only person to run to is God. So whatever he will do will be within the will of God. A good man can run out of the will of God in desperation, but not a godly man. A godly man will never be too desperate that he will journey away from the will of God, because that is his manual for living. Can you now see the difference between being good and being godly? The two are not the same. It is natural to be good, but it is supernatural to be godly. You know who you need, who you need to become what you believe. Okay, let me come again with this point. Now, who you need to become everything you believe in God is not just good people. You need godly people. A godly man is conscious about putting God first. But for a good man, the position of God in his heart does not matter, whether first or last. Are you there? So here we have a good king who was not godly. He was a good king because he wanted to save his people, but he was an ungodly king because he chose to worship idols. It is possible to even have native doctors. It is possible to even have native doctor who have good characters, but you can't have a godly native doctor. It's not possible. You can have a good native doctor because maybe he or she has a good character, a character that the world see as good. But you can't have a godly native doctor. You can have a good witch, maybe because he or she, maybe because she has a godly character, but you cannot have a godly witch. That's to show you that being good and being godly is not the same. The difference between being good and being godly is the fear of God. Don't stop at being good. You need to add godliness to your goodness. Because the king wanted to curse the people of God, he employed a man of God, on his team. How can a man of God agree to curse the people of God because of material gain? It is like a kingdom fighting against itself. According to Jesus, a kingdom that fights against itself shall not stand. Balaam's agreement to the king's demand shows how spiritually corrupt he is. Though Balaam did not know who the Israelite was, he was a prophet who was born into a different tribe. He did not know who the Israelites were. Though the Israelites were, though the Israelites were one of the most popular characters in the Bible, but the fact remains that not everybody knows them. Though most of the nations know them, but not all of them. There are still few nations that do not even know there is a nation, with the name Israel. So it happened to be that Balaam was born into one of these few countries that were not familiar with the Israelites and God's dealing with them. This is why it was easy for Balaam to take the offer. He thought they were like every other nation that lacks spiritual formation, and that he can just curse them anyhow and at any time. So they made 7 altars, and on each of the altars, a ram and a bullock was killed just to make the assignment successful. I hope you know how expensive a bullock is. A bullock is usually more expensive than an average cow because of its size and weight. A bullock can be 2 or 3 times bigger than an average cow. A bullock is a castrated cow. Are you there? Though these requirements were expensive, but yet the king did not mind supplying them because he was determined to curse the Israelites. Meanwhile, these 7 altars were not vacant. The king stood there with all the princes of Moab. You can see that in verse 6. This is the height of sacrifice. Certain wicked people are willing to pay any price just to see that we come under a curse. They are ready to inconvenience themselves and make themselves uncomfortable just to achieve their wicked aim. But for some, the children of God, but for some of the people, you know, who call themselves Christians, praying is too much. Your enemies can do anything to see you in trouble, but you are not ready to give yourself to spiritual exercise. Your enemies are willing to sacrifice 5 cows just to see that you get into trouble, but you can't buy a chicken for your pastor as a way of thanking God for what he did through him. Your enemies can spend a week on the mountain to see that you are completely finished. But you cannot spend 4 hours in God's presence, because to you, that is too long. So after 2.5 hours, you're already checking the time and thinking of how to escape. Those who escape from God's presence will not escape from their enemy's wickedness. You must be ready to give to God something that will worth more than your enemies can offer, including your sleep. I pray that the Lord will help us in Jesus' name. This is the wisdom of God. Don't sell it.